So much like the Twins last week, the Chicago White Sox are preparing for life after the departure of a beloved broadcaster. So today we have our friend Dave Brown on to discuss it. This is Locked On Twins.
You are Locked On Twins, your daily Minnesota Twins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello again, friends, and welcome back to Locked On Twins. I'm your host, Brandon Warren, and you can unfollow me on Twitter at Brandon_WARNE. Thanks for making Locked On Twins your first listen every day. We're free and available on whatever podcast platform that you prefer. How's that for alliteration? As well as on YouTube. And, of course, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Please hang out in the comments section. We love to hear from you, whether it's questions, comments, compliments, all that fun stuff. We would love to hear from you. Today's episode, by the way, is brought to you by Jase Medical. Empower yourself when you purchase a Jase case, providing you with a personal supply of 5 antibiotics that treat 50-plus infections. Get yours today at jasemedical.com. That's Jase medical.com. Now, if you're watching on YouTube, you see my good friend Dave Brown here. Mr. Dave Brown, you can follow him on Twitter at AnswerDaveBrown. How are we doing?
We're doing good, Brandon. I'm glad you had me on. It's you guys know what's going on in Minnesota when it comes to losing a broadcaster. Now the White Sox have lost one of their own.
Yeah, not the same situation. Obviously, Dick Bramer for the better part of 4 decades. Jason Benetti much shorter than that. But Dick Bramer, I think, has a place in our hearts just due to the nostalgia factor. You know, everybody who watches the Twins grew up listening to him, with the exception of, maybe some of the older fans. But then they had, before that, the radio with Halsey Hall and Harmon Killebrew and all that. So with Benetti, though, there's such a special connection to him, to Chicago. He's an exceptional talent. We've seen him nationally do all kinds of different stuff. Can you kind of help me understand the immediate reaction when I guess it broke early-ish Thursday in the morning, but I was absolutely shocked. What was your standpoint or view, and what is your perception of the fan base on a whole?
It was a shock. I can't say that it's 100% of a surprise that they are parting. You could sort of, reading the tea leaves coming up to this point, you could see that they weren't necessarily, the White Sox and Jason Benetti were not agreeing very easily on a contract for the future. And, you always got the feeling that they didn't like how sometimes he'll do the national broadcast, like you mentioned. Although, there's an upside for that too, that, hey, here's the White Sox broadcaster doing ESPN or Fox or whatever it was, Apple. And there are a few people out there on Twitter who didn't care for Benetti's humor. They didn't necessarily like some of the longer stories that he would tell. And I suppose he's not as polished as someone like Dick Bramer would have been doing it for decades, but obviously a talented guy, someone who is for hire in a lot of different places. And people are upset mostly, I think, because they like Jason Benetti. He was kind of one of them. He was a White Sox fan growing up. He was an analytics guy. He had an open mind about that. He tried to be funny. I thought he was funny. Maybe he wasn't always funny, but he certainly tried and had a sense of humor about himself. And the White Sox, Twins fans might have noticed, are in a state right now that it's so poor. There's not a lot to wrap yourself around if you're a White Sox fan. And Jason Benetti made it palatable, at the very least, to watch White Sox games. And I think that it is a shock to many that he's gone, and it is a huge disappointment.
Yeah, I think Luis Robert, I still always want to say Robert just because it sounds fancier. Dylan Cease. And then that's pretty much it. Liam Hendricks getting the buyout that's stretched out. So basically, was same amount of money, but stretched out rather than just paying him in the first place. There's a lot of things going on in White Sox land that, from my perception, don't seem to be going great. And do you get any sense of like trepidation for Benetti leaving? Because as much as I'm sure, you know, the job was difficult for him, and sometimes being too close to your favorite things can make your favorite things feel like work. Sometimes I feel like that too. It's like if you do something you love, it doesn't feel like work. But once you enjoy something and then make it work, I think it can diminish your enjoyment of it. Do you feel like he was ready for a fresh start, or was he really conflicted? Was it that tough of a decision for him?
I don't. I mean, it might be a tough decision just because to pick up stakes and move to another city and try and get to know another fan base and kind of start over. I don't know that that's something that anybody really looks forward to very much. It's a tough job in the first place, and it's difficult
Hmm.
to make those kind of transitions, even though it is just baseball. No matter where you go, I will say that I always kind of got the feeling that maybe Jerry Reinsdorf wasn't as big as of a fan of Benetti, and as maybe some of the fans were, and um, maybe Benetti felt that a little bit. I always kind of, when he and Steve Stone, the analyst, would get kind of critical of the White Sox, I would kind of think in the back of my mind, is Reinsdorf, does he like this? Is he okay with this? And I kind of wonder if that's part of Reinsdorf's hesitation to give Benetti whatever contract he was looking for. Um, and conversely, I wonder, you ask a good question, is working for the White Sox when you're working for Jerry Reinsdorf all it's cracked up to be, even if you're a White Sox fan. So, Jason, from that standpoint, Jason Benetti is going to be fine. He's already a national presence. I think the Tiger fans are going to enjoy him. They kind of were. The Tigers have been in a lurch for a while. They had a broadcaster that the fans seemed to like a few years ago. Mario and Rod Allen was the analyst, and this gives them the Tigers seem to be on the upswing a little bit. I think this is somebody that the Tigers fans can get to enjoy and grow with. So all that's going to be fine. But the White Sox fans are the ones who are left with kind of a questionable future and a kind of an irritating present. So it's going to be interesting to see who they hire. Maybe they'll find a good person, but I kind of thought they had one already.
Yeah, no question about it. And frankly, if there are a lot of Twins fans lamenting that if they had known Benetti was willing to move, why not Minnesota? But why Detroit? I mean, do you just get the sense of, stay in the division? He knows the division, he knows all that stuff. I'm sure the opportunity was there. That Little Caesars money probably couldn't hurt. But I don't know. I just feel like Jerry Reinsdorf gets in the way of everything good for not only probably that team's fan base, but also the Bulls of late.
Well, that's a common sentiment among White Sox and Bulls fans for sure in Chicago. I'm not there anymore. I mean, I grew up there and I'm in Kansas City now, but I keep tabs on all that stuff, and I covered the White Sox for a local paper, 15 years ago. So, and that was the sort of the aura around Reinsdorf, that even then, that, well, if they do win, it's going to be maybe not in spite of him, but he's going to do things his own way, and
Mhm.
sometimes that's going to trip things up and make it kind of less palatable for the fans. But you know, one thing I wanted to get out was this reminds me of, I was a little boy when it happened, but when Jerry Reinsdorf bought the White Sox, I think I was 8 or 9, and they had in place Harry Carey, who was a very popular announcer. I would say more popular than Benetti is now,
Mhm.
but still, it was a situation where the team was bad, and what they had going for them was Harry Carey and his camaraderie and chemistry with Jimmy Pearsall on the broadcasts. And this just reminds me of that it's you'd think it would be good cover for the stank that the White Sox are giving out right now, but it just reminds me of when Reinsdorf decided that Harry was a little too popular, and didn't want to keep him around, and it signified something to him that was distasteful. So he let him go to the Cubs, where he became even more popular, and it was kind of like people talk about losing Sammy Sosa to the Cubs. Well, Harry Carey was the first
Mm-hmm.
person of that kind that the White Sox lost and went to the Cubs and was a bigger deal. And then Sammy Sosa, and now kind of this. It's another. Maybe there's more things that I'm not even thinking of, but those three things kind of go together. Where Reinsdorf has kind of fumbled it, and it's. I mean, I guess at least Jason Benetti isn't going to the Cubs, but he is leaving,
Mm-hmm.
and it makes it harder for us to watch the team.
Well, maybe they can steal Boog Shambi, but I have my doubts there. Also, too, I feel like the perception of Reinsdorf, which albeit isn't good, would probably be drastically worse if he hadn't had Michael Jordan to, you know, paper over some of his shortcomings. Really, it would be just then the '05 team, which was a pain in my hind end as a Twins fan back then. But
Sure.
yeah, things with Reinsdorf are certainly not great. Let's take a quick second here though and talk about our friends at Jase Medical, or my friends at Jase Medical. You will, I think, enjoy them too, Mr. Answer Dave. We spend a lot of time talking together, you and I, not you and me, Dave, but the listener and me. We get fired up together on wins and losses, who starts, who sits, all that fun stuff. And that's a great connection. We love having that connection with you. But today our chat's going to be a little more personal. Whether you're on extended travel, bracing for a major weather event, or limited by yet another supply shortage, you are covered. Thanks to our partners at Jase Medical, life-saving antibiotics and a long list of daily medications can be ordered in a 1-year supply. Also, you can get ED generics. I'm going to try not to stumble through this for Cialis and Viagra and Revasio prescriptions. Now go online right now at jasemedical.com to receive your 12-month supply on your daily medication. Remember to use promo code LOCKEDON at checkout for a discount as well. A verified customer had this to say about Jase. I'm thankful for this service. Supply chain issues caused me to cut pills in half just so I could have them. I ordered most of my daily meds with a year's supply. I also ordered an antibiotic kit, and now I feel secure. Prices are lower than local pharmacies, and I highly recommend this for everyone. So if you or someone would love to get peace of mind by having a year's supply of any daily medication, go to jasemedical.com and see if it's offered for you. Now, remember to use the promo code LOCKEDON for $20 off your purchase. That's Jase Medical, JASE Medical.com. All right, Dave, we are into the bullpen, second segment of the show. Thanks for making Locked On Twins your first listen every day. Coming back here on Friday, I'm going to do off-season vibes. There's 3 different paths that I could see the Twins taking this off-season, and I'm not going to tell you any of them right now. So you're going to have to come back and listen to them on Friday. Got a busy weekend planned ahead. Little man turned 1 yesterday, so we're going to try find time Friday and then sneak in a bonus episode this weekend to make up for lost time. I did want to touch, Dave, on some touch on some news with Dave. Probably should be more clear about that.
I'm too far away. You can't reach me.
Yeah, exactly. Last day of GM meetings canceled due to the stomach bug. Is someone doing, what would you call this? Like food poisoning warfare? Or do you think it's just, somebody ate the fish? What do you think is going on here? And do the GM meetings matter all that much?
Some years, no. It does seem like there have been other years where there's not even been a whole lot of chatter, much less comments. Anything getting out. This year, it seemed a couple players showed up and did some interviews, and maybe that happens more than I realize. But it seems like it is very much an appetizer for the winter meetings that come in a month or so.
Yep.
And that's usually, as fans know, that's the big activity. So, I think it's good to keep the lines open, although don't these guys talk all the time? I don't know if it's like how it used to be where players, didn't work out in the off season and they got in shape in spring training. I think these GMs really have their trading muscles, ready to go all season. So I don't know how valuable the GM meetings are.
So
I do know
it's not like Brad Pitt hopping on a plane to go talk to Mark Shapiro in Cleveland.
right.
on
I
Moneyline.
mean, I suppose that happens from time to time, but
Right.
and as far as the food and getting sick, I saw John Heyman of CBS tweet that he had gone to In-N-Out Burger for
Of
almost every
course.
meal, so he avoided whatever it was that the other GMs and front office people were doing to get sick. So I think that's not to do the product placement, but I think that's the way to go, no matter what kind of meeting you're having.
Yeah, no question about it. Sounds like virtually any brewer on the roster is available. At the forefront of that, especially with Brandon Woodruff now on the shelf, is Corbin Burns. And when I think about the Twins, and this is a vibe I'm going to touch on, I think they're going to swing big in a trade because, this offseason with the budget stuff, with Bally and broadcasting rights and that sort of thing, I get the sense that if the Twins are really going to cut payroll, I know they said they would. I don't know how much that actually matters. I think they're going to swing big for another starter. Now, whether big means a second Pablo Lopez type that they think they can, cultivate maybe a little better performance out of, or if you just get a ready-made stud guy like Burns, I feel like that's going to be the avenue the Twins take to replace Sonny Gray, Kenta Maeda. Maybe bring Kenta back on a one-year deal because it's not going to be crazy expensive. But Corbin Burns to the Twins, do you think that would be a decent fit?
It would be, I think he's not a guy who, I think there's always been kind of this thing about Burns that they're pretty cautious with him.
Yeah,
They don't like to use him third time through the order very much. So he's not, Aaron Nola in that way where, he's going to be 7 or 8 innings, but for 6 innings, the guy's pretty nails. I
yeah,
think that would be good. I think, the Twins also, if they have a little better luck with some players who are injured this year, I hate to sound like, the GM who doesn't go out and get anybody, but the Twins can get better with the players that they have already being
yeah,
healthier in the
yeah.
next season. So, you had a little taste of what Carlos Correa can do when everything's right in the playoffs. He had some great moments and was really driving them for at least for the first round. So, but Corbin Burns would be, I think you're right about the Brewers kind of giving up now that Craig Counsell left town. I see a big pivot from them. So that's somebody who's going to be available. I don't know who the Luis Ariz type, stick is, or
Mhm.
carrot, but he would be terrific. Absolutely.
Well, and if the Twins trade chips are Jorge Polanco or Max Kepler, that's probably not going to be of interest, obviously, just because if the Brewers are starting over, they're not going to want guys in their late 20s. So it's probably going to be more likely along the lines of Emmanuel Rodriguez and some of the prospects
Yeah.
near the cusp there. Former Twins infielder Luis Ariz named Silver Slugger in the National League. Can you remember a trade where both teams benefited more? Um, Again, Twins needed pitching. Marlins seem to be just churning out really good pitchers, guys who can't necessarily stay healthy, but good pitchers besides.
Right.
Um, I can't remember more of a win-win trade in recent seasons.
I remember thinking of this trade as definitely when Ariz got off to the start that he did. And I know Lopez had a bad month in there, but he got off to a pretty solid start too. I remember thinking early on that's exactly what this kind of deal was going to be, and it really has. And I can't, to answer your question, I can't think of a better example of a trade where it really worked out for both teams. And I don't think you would get a complaint from either side about, well, we didn't have a rise. The Twins more or less made up for that, and Pablo Lopez was definitely driving what they
Yep.
had going, and was a huge reason why they did as well as they did. So it's neat when trades work out exactly in that way. There aren't too many that do.
Yeah, and Edouard Julien emerged as an option at second base. Stone hands, I think you'd probably say at second, although he improved as the season went down the stretch, but definitely an option at second base, depending on where Polanco ends up. Nick Castellanos possibly available from the Phillies. Twins could use a right-hand stick. I don't know how much you'd want to play him in the outfield, but if Buxton can play center, they'll have some plate appearances at DH. 3 years and $60 million left, though, and I'm not sure how I feel about that. I kind of feel though like this could be. So when Nelson Cruz signed with the Mariners, I remember thinking that many years for a guy that old and that much money, I was like, there's no way. And then he was phenomenal for like 10 years after that. With Castellanos, I kind of feel like even though he's had a couple years that weren't that great, one bad and one actually perfectly fine, that he's going to be a guy that where you'll look back and be like, I can't believe that people would have had any trepidation about trading for this guy. I think he'll bounce back. It's going to be good to have him in a clubhouse because I think he's got kind of this edge to him, but I don't think it's harmful. And so I don't know. I mean, I don't know how I feel about 3 years and 60 million, but at the same time, if he was a free agent, you'd have to give him more years and more money. So why
He's
not?
got a fun swagger about him.
Yeah.
Harmless. You said harmless. I don't think there's a downside to the attitude that he brings from that side. He ended up last season at the end. He was in a horrible way at the plate, a bad slump, and kind of didn't know how to. At least it sounded like he didn't know how to get out of it. Guys get out of slumps though after some time. He's actually improved. I wouldn't say that like he's a great right fielder, but you can put him in right field now, and he's a much better defensive player than he was maybe 3 years ago. He was a third baseman when he came up with the Tigers way back when, and it's taken him a while to learn the outfield and to figure out the importance of defense. There's some funny quotes in Castellanos' history about that, about paying attention on defense, but he's better there. The Phillies would be selling low, and the thing that sort of made me go, I'm not sure about this with Castellanos leaving, was that they just didn't tender an offer, a qualifying offer to Rhys Hoskins. It seems to me that maybe one of those guys not coming back makes sense. I'm not sure about both, so I don't know like how eager the Phillies actually are to get rid of Castellanos. They don't have too much inside information on that. It's just from a logical standpoint. If we're not having Hoskins back, we still need somebody out there to swing the bat. So, but I would cautiously bring in Castellanos. I don't know what that trade would require, but I think he'll probably bounce back. But he ended the season last year in a really bad way at the plate.
Yeah, I'm pulling for him because his mom follows me on Twitter, which obviously is a huge deal. But yeah, he could be a really interesting fit. It reminds me a little of Alex Gordon moving off third base and kind of finding himself after that.
Yeah.
Alex Gordon, though, frustrated me to no end every time he caught a Joe Mauer line drive down the left field line. But since we're talking about Royals, last piece of news du jour before we move on to Bally and talking about what you're up to. Zach Greinke undecided on his future. What's it going to be like when Zach Greinke is no longer playing, not only from a national standpoint, but from a Royals standpoint? Because from a Twins standpoint, he was pitching against the Twins when I was in my early 20s. I'm not that anymore. So we've been watching him for a long time, the ups, the downs, and all that stuff. And whenever he walks off the mound, whatever he does next is going to be fascinating. But what a fascinating guy. Like just a curious, interesting man.
For sure. And, if you get him at the right moment, a really good guy to talk to and get opinions. Sometimes he doesn't really have anything to say, but, there's a lot churning in that brain, especially when it comes to baseball. He's a good scout, and he's talked about being interested in the front office kind of thing. He's maybe not sure, in practice what that would mean, but it took him a while. He started out pretty poorly last year. By the end of the season, he was serviceable as a pitcher still, and I think that's what he's looking for. He's on the verge of 3,000 strikeouts, I believe, and I think that's something that he wants to get. It's just.
Do you think it's Royals or bust with him, by the way?
I don't know. I mean, that's a good question. I kind of wanted the Royals. I'm not a fan exactly, but I thought it would be neat to end the career with the Royals and then kind of go into the Hall of Fame as a Royals player. I think there's a pretty good chance that he will do that anyway, but it would be nice for Greinke to retire as a Royal. And what are the Royals doing? mean, that's another team, kind of like the White Sox. I'm not sure
Yeah.
exactly what their motivations are and how much money they want to spend on pitchers. And I mean, they could use a guy like Greinke just to hang around and give the fans some reason to go to Royals games. There
Yeah.
isn't that much reason to do that right now. So there's
Right.
incentive for the Royals to bring back Greinke. Um, I, I think, based on his performance last year, he's pushing it a little bit. I think one more year at the most, and that's going to be it, just based on how last year went. I don't know if it's Royals or bust, but I kind of hope it is. And I
Yeah.
hope he stays one more year and then hangs it up.
Yeah, as long as he doesn't go out like Ken Griffey Jr. did, that'd be just devastating. Let's take a quick second here. When we come back, we'll wrap things up with some Bally Sports discussion and State of the Central, and help Dave figure out what's next. We're gonna have a lot of fun with that, so stay tuned. All right, Dave, we're back, and Bally Sports. The writing is on the wall. Things are not going great there. When I think about the fact that I'm sure it's about 20 teams have them as their regional sports network.
Now we're
Four
down
of
to
the
like
five.
12 now, I think.
Oh, is that right? Okay, so it's
Yeah.
four. Well, it's four of the five teams in the AL Central, are with Bally or had been with Bally through last season. And when I think about the number of teams that are kind of in those same situations for broadcasting rights, am I foolish to believe that maybe it's going to be a widespread thing this offseason, that teams are going to be really, really, really budgetarily conscious?
Well, I mean, that's one of the things about Bally Sports. It wasn't and hasn't been just their issues. It's a league wide thing when it comes to, people have talked about the transformation of the cable TV package, and cord cutting, and what people are willing to pay for who aren't baseball fans. And I think that's where a lot of the rub is with the regional sports networks. And Bally ran into that issue. They also ran into, and I was a national writer for them for 3 years until around October 1st. They ran into an issue where, people complained all the time about the app. And
They're
I
still
don't know
doing
if it
that,
was,
by the way, with the Timberwolves. It's horrible.
well, that's what people usually say about it, whether it's the Timberwolves or the Royals or some other team. The technology with the app is where Bally itself really, has blown it. They had an opportunity to broadcast these games, and it's the technology that has failed. Yeah, they're in a tough boat economically because of how cable TV is paid for these days. But it's the technology. The app was really kind of worked against them for years, and they didn't fix it. Um, so, but to answer your question about other teams, yeah, there are other situations. AT&T has some teams, and where there's going to be this transformation. It's, how much are places willing to pay? How much are places willing to pay? What kind of advertising can they get? It's a wide open kind of thing where we don't know, what the future is going to be, other than it's probably going to be for fewer, less amount than what teams, like the Royals signed a big TV contract with Bally a few years ago. Are they going to finish that? I can't imagine that they will. So that's going to, shake up some spending habits of front offices, and there's going to be some definite uncertainty about what tomorrow's going to bring until we have a little more, you know, I don't know what the word is, but until we know who the next business is that's going to pay for these broadcasts. Where's that money coming from? We're not sure.
So you think it's a temporary thing, though? Like, it's not going to be a drastic. I mean,
cyclical more than
Yeah.
temporary, and drastic maybe in the short term. I mean, we saw stories about the Padres not being able to cover payroll and having to take out loans. I mean, that's kind of an extreme example because they have had a huge payroll, and some teams,
yeah.
the Orioles, I don't think, are spending $65 million on their roster. So, so it depends on the team situation. I mean, there might be some extreme moments, maybe a season or two where we don't know what's going to happen. But I think the whole thing is cyclical anyway, and they'll figure out a way. Somebody will figure out a way to overpay down the road to make up for the lost revenue here in the interim.
So you look at teams like the White Sox on NBC, Sports Chicago. You got the Yankees on Yes, the Mets on SNY. You got Masson, you got Nesson. Do those teams have an advantage this offseason budget-wise then? I mean, the White Sox being the only team in the Central with a deal like that, to me, would suggest that it's probably not that worrisome because they have the Reinsdorf cap. Their biggest contract ever handed out was Andrew Benintendi. Do you think though that the teams who have their own networks are going to be at an advantage, or do you think it's going to be just kind of it is what it is right now because broadcast rights are just up in the air across the league?
No, I think there's something to what you're saying because there's a little bit of certainty there. Of course, it depends on how they have spent up to this point and what kind of
Yep.
contracts are they owed? Are they going to be owing in the next few years that are already on the books? If they don't have necessarily, the one thing, it seems like that the owners are in a paying mood right now. A couple years ago, you'd go into the GM meetings, the winter meetings, and you could just tell that there was going to be freezing out. There was going to be hesitation about what we're going to pay. It doesn't seem like that's we kind of loosened the restrictor plates a little bit last year. I think it's going to be even a little bit more free spending this year, at least like you said, among some of the teams with some certainty about
Mhm.
their local revenue. So, short answer to your, a long answer, but a short answer to your question is it depends on what kind of costs they have in the books already for the years to come. If they haven't spent too much, if they have their own network, they're going to be more willing to spend. Sure.
And I think too, there's something to be said about if you sign, let's say Cody Bellinger, and you say, "Hey, will you take 12.5 million the first year, and then we'll bump you up to 28, 30 beyond that." There is some guys who will be willing to do that. Say, "Hey, we need a year to figure out what's going to happen with these rights. We're still going to pay you, 200 million over your 8 years or whatever it is, or 150 over 6." I think there could be some of that too, where, hey, get us through this uncertainty, and we'll make sure that you're taken care of.
For sure. And the agents will get creative with that to a certain extent too. And, they're going to want to get top dollar, but like you said, they can kind of work around whatever the economic realities are if the big payoff is there at some point within the life of the deal.
Well, and what's funny is that a lot of the teams that have their own networks are just kind of dog water right now. I mean, the Nationals, bad. Yankees, not where they want to be. Red Sox, not where they want to be. White Sox, arguably the most disappointing team of the 2023 season. So a lot of these teams with their own regional networks are not one stud away where they're going to be like, oh, we're going to bully somebody out of Cody Bellinger. He doesn't do enough to get the Red Sox over the top. Maybe the Yankees, but so we'll see what happens there. I have two more things for you if you're still doing good on time.
Sure.
You told me off the air you have your first Hall of Fame vote this winter. What we used to have on my old podcast, Mike Biardino of the Pioneer Press back in the day when he was still living in the Twin Cities, and he would reveal his ballot. Do you plan on doing yours as a reveal on the website? If you don't want to say, you don't have to, but also like, what's your feeling about grinding to get to that point? Like, it's got to be quite an honor to be able to do that.
It's something that I've wanted for a long time. Before anything else, I'm a huge baseball nerd, and
Mhm.
I take the Hall of Fame really seriously, perhaps more seriously than I should. But that's how I felt about it. It's an honor is a good way to put it. I've put a lot of, I don't want to call it work, but I think about every year when people when the Hall of Fame chatter has gotten up, I've thought about, well, what would I do, and who would be on my ballot. Not necessarily that anybody would care, but it's just I don't know, a mental exercise, and it's fun, and I think that's the way you should do it. I don't think that you should spend only a little time on it, or a weekend or whatever. It's a big deal. I mean, it's it's the ultimate honor in baseball. And even though the Hall of Fame has some warts and some
Yep.
issues with it, and there's lots of politics involved, and sometimes there aren't any obvious right answers. It's the history of the game. It's it's the most important thing that we have. It's the tradition. It's handing
Mhm.
it down from generation to generation. It's recognizing the context of what's gone on before. All those reasons are why it's an honor to vote. And I don't have I haven't thought about like a process of revealing a ballot or anything like that. I think
Mhm.
my intentions going in, and I know there's some rules about what I'm supposed to say and what I'm not. I plan on voting. I think I'll vote for 9 or 10 guys this year. I think there still are that many. Uh,
Yep.
so I'm not. There's a couple. Bonds and Clemens fell off the ballot in recent years, and I think mostly because of the PED issues.
Yep.
I think there are other good reasons to actually not vote for those guys.
Yep.
Domestic violence with Bonds. He reportedly, it's in court papers. It's been written about. Assaulted his wife at the time on numerous occasions, and Roger Clemens's relationship with Mindy McCready is
That was the name I was going to invoke too.
really questionable, and I
At
mean
best.
at the very least, and I'm being
Yep.
nice. It's awful. I
Yep.
think those are good reasons to not vote for somebody. So if
Sure.
I get on my high horse about anything, it would be something like that.
So are you on the holiday card list for Murray Chess yet, or is that maybe your second time voting where you'll be able to stand on his lawn?
I enjoy reading Murray's, or did, from afar. So
Yeah,
I
what a
don't,
legend. I mean, honestly, to be honest, a legend.
for sure, absolutely. And there's a place for uh, those kind of histories at the table to discuss. But I don't think he knows who I am, honestly. So I don't get any cards from any of those guys, really.
Yeah. Well, what's up with you right now? I mean, you said Bally and you had a parting of the ways. What are you looking for? What are you trying to do here moving forward? Because well, I was going to ask you, your Twitter account got clapped, which was a
It
real
did. That
shame.
was, in unrelated news. Yeah, my
Yeah.
original Answer Dave Twitter account got clapped. It was a complete misunderstanding, and it would be a tangent to go off as to why. But I had to start over with Answer Dave Brown. Very different name than Answer Dave. But
Oh yeah, for sure.
so a very eventful season for me in terms of losing my job and then losing my social media identity. But yeah, I'm a free agent. I've applied at a few different places. I'm in the Kansas City area and probably prefer to stay there. But
Yeah.
if you own a Major League Baseball writing outlet, I am available. I know we just had the World Series, so maybe there's some turnover at your company. Uh, just let Brandon know, or find me on Twitter at Answer Dave Brown, and I'm going to talk to you at length about what I can do for. And I know it sounds like I'm kidding, but I'm also kind of serious. That
Yeah.
I love doing this. You have to be in the BBWA for 10 straight years to get a Hall of Fame vote. And it's just kind of funny that here, I think it's actually my 11th year, and I'm unemployed, as I don't really have anywhere to write at the moment about
Yeah.
the Hall of Fame. So it's some irony there. It's but not the fun kind.
Well, no question about it. We'll do our best, see what we can find for you. Dave, thank you for taking so much. Thank you so much for taking time out of your Thursday evening. Again, I appreciate you coming on talking about Jason Benetti, who, um, what a loss for the White Sox, who just kind of keep taking L's nonstop.
They
But
do.
yeah, I appreciate your time. Again, people follow him at Answer Dave Brown. But for now, this is time to say so long and thank you for hanging out. This has been Locked On Twins.